Okay, after completing the drawing, we need to add dimensions. Before you start dimensions, make sure that you have set the layer correctly. The layer for this dimensions is given on this template file. If you don't have one, then you need to create one. But in this, if you're using this template, you don't need to create one because we already have one. It's called dimensions. So switch the current layer to dimensions. The reason for that, because dimension lines are thin lines. Is not the color is the main objective. Color just for some display on the screen, but line thickness is important. This is standard dictates that we need to have thin lines for dimensionings, and object lines are heavy lines. Okay, let's begin the dimensioning by adding some of these dimensions shown on your assignment sheet as well as on the Canvas page. So our goal should be to get the dimensioning format exactly to display the way it shows here, with some minor exception maybe, but in the process you will learn how to create this. This particular one is done with the different text style. Our default text style right now on AutoCAD is different, but other things we have to be able to control. We get into some of those details as we process, we go through this process of adding dimensioning. Okay, so on the ribbon you have these options you can select from there. This is one way to select that. As always, keyboard has options you can type, but it's convenient to select any of these, or from the pull down menu under the dimension category you have all these choices. So also we have this something called quick dimension. I'm going to begin with this one right now, then we explore some of the other options. For this one, I'm going to first select a radius option and select a radius, and then select this one here, this arc. And right now my object snap, actually grid snap is on and is jumping from one point to another point, doesn't let me to be flexible on my placement of dimensions. So for that I need to turn off the grid snap by pressing F9 function key. Now it's free to move. So I will just this is the dimension type that you don't want to have horizontal or vertical. Standard recommends that you have some kind of angle, about 45 degrees in that range. So then click to get location. And there are some other rules, like you don't want to be too far from the object lines. You don't want to be too close to that. So it's just approximate location. This is called the approximate rule. So apply that. So it's something similar to what you see here that I have. You can always escape the dimension and come back and modify by selecting the location. If it's not correctly done, you can always drag him to the right location. So when it's acceptable, then you are going to see something else on this here that shows 2x. What that 2x means is that we have two, actually I have the radius on this side, but it's not critical. So 2x r 0.5, 2x r 0.5. So that means they're both arcs are the same size. That's what it means. This is a symbol we used to call typical, no longer that used word. So we have replaced all the wording by standard by symbols. Okay, so now this we're supposed to be on this side. Let me just repeat this one more time. I'm going to select the radius and select here. So when I have this one, then I'm going to drag this one to have that position that shows on that handout sheet. Okay, then I'm going to add that 2x by double clicking on this one. Double left click, and then make sure that you the arrow key go to the beginning of them and type 2x capital and space. And now click any blank area outside of this text area, and that completes. And now it's asking to select another object. So right now I'm going to press escape key and come back to delete this one. We don't want to repeat this twice. That's what we dimension only once. You notice as you added this, added the center mark for you. If there's only one you have to dimension, it's okay to leave that center mark. If there are duplication of this, there are several circles on the same center, each one would place one. At that time, I would recommend you turn this one off and we add this manually. We go through some area like that. In this case, I believe that would be fine because this is the only dimension on this side. Another dimension is going to be on this side, is for diameter of the circle. So I'm going to go to select diameter and point to this circle, and then again approximate rule should be followed, not too far and not too close, and also the angle, approximate angle about 45 degrees. Then select the dimension, select the point that you see the little green blue dot there, select that, becomes red, which is hot grip, what we call, and now it's ready to, the grip point can move and then have this position. In this case also we need to type 2x because there are two holes are the same size. And again, double left click and then add word 2x, spacebar. So we have completed so far what we call radial dimensions, diameter and radius. Now if we want to add more radius, we do have, of course, here, there are two here. I'm going to add one of those and see the format and try to learn how to modify that. Let's do radius dimension here. And this is the format which is not the way our assignment sheet shows. You notice that this is the way it shows here, 1.5. There's a center mark here, and there's also points to the center mark to the arc. In this case, we don't have that. So first of all, having the center mark, we have to do something else ourselves. We go to the dimension and select the center mark, and then highlight this arc, and that's going to give you the center here. So this tells us that the center of this arc is somewhere here, which is shows on the little plus sign. So how do we fix that to show exactly that format? So this is how you're going to learn to do that. So to do that, you will create another dimension style rather than using the current one by typing D as a shortcut, pressing enter to access dimension style menu. You notice that everything we have done so far is under the standard. So if we create a new style, it automatically says copy of standard. Okay, we can accept that name if we want to, then continue. What copy of standard does, takes all the settings we already have and brings into this new settings. But before I do that, I need to do something else. I'm going to cancel this and then come back to that. So next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to add one more thing here before we change that style. I'm going to add this linear dimension between the center and center of this arc, which is this one. You notice the number that how it shows, 1.88 versus 1.875, which is 7.8 supposed to be, but this one runs off, rather than 7.85 shows 8.8 because we do have only two decimal places. So let's go back to this dimension style again by pressing D, typing D, pressing enter, and now change modify under the standard. Under the standard, we need to change that first. And then we want to have primary units. Under the primary units tab, notice under the unit shows decimal, which is fine. Under that shows precision, which is 2. We need to change to 3 decimal places. And under the same tab, you have another option that you change. I have given you on this Canvas page that change zero suppression, suppress the zero, leading zero, which is this one, leading checked. So make sure that yours, if is blank box next to leading, check that. What that means is no zeros before decimal. No zero before decimal. For example, 0.5 would not show 0.5, show just 0.5. That's the space saving features, and that's adapted in the standard for inch dimensioning is the best to not to show that. Okay, so that is done. Now I'm going to go back and notice that updates automatically. So dimensioning changes, updates automatically because they are blocks. They have a property we call associative properties. See, when you click on dimension, select this extension line and dimension line and text all as a group one together. So you don't want to lose that property, then would not update itself. So even though I did start with the 2 decimal places, now everything changed to 3 decimal places. Okay, now I have that fixed. Let's add all the linear dimension first before we get into fixing this problem here. Let's go to add linear dimension. For this one, I'm using the linear by selecting the center and center. And this gives us vertical dimension here. We need to have that. And also we need to have basically all these dimensions that I'm here that need to be added, the horizontal and vertical dimensions. So basically I'm going to do those, add in all these dimensions. I'm going to repeat the dimension linear again and selecting the center to center of this arc. And this time I'm going to move to some spacing here. You don't want to be too far and too close. Again, try to approximate position is about ½ inch they recommended. This one is a little bit too far. I'm going to bring him down a bit closer. Remember, you can always modify that. And we do have a horizontal location for this on the X direction. We don't have the Y direction. We need to add that one too. And notice that this one, I don't have any center line yet because I have not added the radius for this. If I add the radius, it's going to be automatically give me one. So let's do that one too, add in the radius dimension. But before that, I need to finish this linear dimension by selecting linear and add in this center to center this time, given the vertical dimensions. Actually, I do have horizontal on that 1.875. Now I need to have this 1.125, 1.1 dimensions. So that seems like it completes all the linear dimensions so far we have. And now back to this, fixing this one and adding other dimensions. Okay, let's do add the center, this radius dimension first. I'm going to have radius and then select this arc, and notice that this is also giving me this format, which is, again, remember we are under the standards right now. These are the standard settings. All these changes to make this format is under the dimension style, which constantly you're going to use that. Dimension style, and then under the modify, all these changes are under the tab called fit, how behaves the text. So that when you select the fit tab, you notice that the default says either text or arrow, best fit. This is most often, this is good. Unless I want to make some changes, in this case I want to have actually this option, text. And then under the standard, we don't want to change it, I'm sorry. Text should be changed under the new style. So I have standard, I'm going to create a new one under the copy of standard. Under the copy of standard, I don't want to change the standard because existing one would update. I don't want that to change. They are fine. So I want to create a new one. Under the new one, from the best fit, we change to text. Okay. And now copy of standard is the current one, and close this one to finish. Okay, this is created under the standard. How can I change to copy of standard? By selecting, and you see the quick property, I can change that. It says dimension style standard. I can click on that one change copy of standard. If you don't have this copy of the quick property display, make sure you have that display on yours. It's convenient. If not, we still can change them by going to the dimension and saying update. Because my current setting is now copy of standard, I can say update and select this one and then press enter. That would change. After that, you come back and make some modification. And you notice that it's changed right now. Okay. So actually, I don't need to have that center line here. If you want the center mark here also, we could do that by adding the center mark manually, because this suppresses the center mark, doesn't show you like we did on this one. Okay, let's go back to fix these. Okay, so how about this one? If I update this, what would happen? Let's go to dimension, update, and select this one too. Okay, I have selected the text. Okay, so that is fine too. Another way of changing that is going to the modify, saying the match properties. Because this is already changed, if I change that, I can pick another one similar to that. Let me just dimension. Right now, remember, our current setting is already set to be copy of standard. Remember? Now, everything I do is going to be dimensioned under that. What is the difference between copy of standard and standard? When you click on the copy of standard, it's going to show you that it's under this. Your copy of standard is the plus fit, and arrow and text is 3. So basically everything is the same except the fit. Fit is changed. So if we make that one current, which is already current, and then add this dimension, radius, and select this arc, and you notice it's already correct. So what doesn't have right now is the, we could say this one also 2x, but here is because the arc is a situation that is not, it's proper to show both of them. It's is it different than this arc that I had 2x. So you could also, it's possible to do that too. It's this is preferred to have this one. Dimension, center mark, and that gives us center mark for this one individually. Okay. All right, that looks like completes our all radial dimensions, and as well as our dimensions for this holes, which is dimensioned with the diameter. One of the standard rule is that all the holes should be dimensioned with diameter and all the arcs with the radius. That's what we have followed here. They're all radius dimensions, all the arcs, except the full circle, which represents the holes, are done by diameter dimensions. One more thing here is this dimension in the polygon. Can I use any of these to select the polygon? Answer is no. And if you do that, you're going to get the error message. Let's try that. Let's say I am going to add diameter symbol here, or diameter. As soon as I pick that, it's going to say, okay, select arc or circle. That means these options works only for diameter, and radius works only for circles and arcs. Because this is not in that category, they are made of a bunch of lines, segments, and is not proper way to do that. If I want to point to create something like we have on this assignment sheets here, this, to call out this across flats 1.5, one way to dimension this is from flat to flat dimension, but just learn how to do this one by using different option, which we call leaders. Leaders can point to anything, any object. Can be circle, can be anything. In this case, polygon. We go to dimension, we select the call something multi-leader. If you type the multi-leader or leader from the keyboard, you get that command. It's going to ask, this is not associative like this dimensions are. It's something you have to type yourself. So I just pick a point here. This picks automatically my midpoint here. Doesn't have to be in the midpoint. Can be anywhere close that touches that line. You can use the nearest, hold the shift, right click and say nearest if you don't want to be in the midpoint exactly. You want to be flexible. Just this point, wherever you pick, is going to grab that point and now move to somewhere, define the angle. And it automatically gives you a little what we call shoulder here, and it's waiting for you to type. So I'm going to have the cap lock on and type that across flats, and notice the text size and everything, the color and everything is so big, 1.5. Okay, so that tells us something. Actually, the color is fine because I still am in dimension there, but the text size, you notice that is different. Arrow size is different because this doesn't follow the dimension rule. It has its own settings and own style. Okay, let's fix that. So you don't want to have this one different than this. Okay, everything controlled for dimension you saw under the dimension style. We have already changed the arrow size on template. That you didn't have to worry about that, but we have not changed the style for leaders. So for this, you learn how to do that by going to format and finding this style for multi-leader style. Multi-leader style. And this is going to open up this, and this one also has a standard and annotate. We're going to use the standard and modify. Under the modify, you notice that we do have different tabs. One is the scale factor, which is in this case 1. We don't have to change that. Another one is the leader format. And here shows the arrowhead size. This is again, 0.18 is the same for dimensioning. We have changed on this template we are using to 0.125. So we will change that one also 0.125. In case if you use another template, make sure you change under dimension also if you're dealing with this type of technical drawing, 0.125. Okay, so that changes. What else we need to change? Text size also has to be changed. This was the arrow size. To do that, you go to this content, and under the content tab, you have this one says text height shows 0.18 and say 0.125. Notice the colors, everything we are not changing because it follows the layer, not anything else. So after you change those two, I expect that would match with your other texts. As you notice here, now notice the arrow size and notice the text size. And these are all typed capital. That's the typically we type, and that's but the size are the same. Okay. That completes your dimensioning. If you want to add this little center mark in the middle here, we can go back to center mark. We should be doing that one too. Center mark, and then add this center mark. And that because of these extension line kind of came from the center, we can just pick the end point of it. So that's something you can always do that first, so you don't have that issue, so you don't lose the center mark. So this way you want to have the center mark play. So I'm going to move that one to end of that center mark. So you have that. Okay, it's the best always place center marks first. I forgot to do this one in the beginning, so that's why I picked the center point. So you can always come back to change. This is the whole idea on this one. I just wanted to know this. That completes our assignment.